Welcome to the Filipino American Women Project short story by your host, Jen Amos. The purpose of this segment is to share little epiphanies that pop up just throughout the day and the little stories that made these epiphanies possible. It's about the little moments throughout your day where you're just introspective and something pops up in your mind, or something happens right in front of you that gets you to realize something. Normally in these type of situations where I get these little epiphanies, I like to tweet about them on Twitter. And if you're ever curious, you could follow me, Jen Amos, on Twitter at @TheJenAmos. This segment of the show is really experimental, which is why I'm having a little more casual of an opening. So anyway, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy this short story and epiphany of the day. Do it anyway. Today's life lesson is about taking action even when you don't have all your ducks in a row. So let me tell you a story. For some time now, I've been going back and forth in launching the Filipino American Woman Project. That is until finally I decided to give myself a deadline. I told myself that I was going to launch the show again in summer. I actually didn't know when summer would begin, but I told myself I was going to launch the show in summer. I actually had to Google when was the first day of summer. Turns out it was June 22nd, in case you're like me and you did not know when summer started. If you lived in San Diego for most of your life, you could care less about when summer begins, because it's basically summer all year round. And maybe there's a day or two or a week or so where it rains, but essentially it's that beautiful mid-70s type weather all year long. Now, if you live on the East Coast now, like I do, you really see the shift in seasons. And I'll just leave it at that. That is my excuse as to why I did not know the actual day of summer beginning. So here's the thing. I set this deadline for myself, and I really didn't know how I was going to get started. I didn't know how I was going to even have the motivation to revive this project. In the last year, since I went on hiatus, I moved to the East Coast for the first time in my life. I have been a West Coast girl for 20 years, living in San Diego, California. And prior to that, I was a military child, moving around every 2 to 3 years. So the shift was really big for me. It was the first time in my adult life that I moved to the East Coast. I really just moved, moved away from mom, at least. Even though I wasn't living with her, I was still within driving distance to see her whenever I wanted to. Now, here's the thing. I didn't just move once. I moved twice. I was in Richmond, Virginia for about 7 months. And then March 2019, my husband and I decided to sporadically move to Virginia Beach, which, by the way, is like San Diego, just with the 4 seasons. The reason why we moved out here is because of our family business. We had some colleagues that were already out here, and we thought it was best to work closely with them physically. Then our colleagues had decided to expand with their own business to Virginia Beach. So the first trip I made out here, having no expectations, I immediately fell in love with the community, and a month later we moved. Most of my mental space in the last year has been focused on this transition to a new life.
All right, Jen Amos here, jumping into the middle of our show, as I always do, to remind you why this show is possible. So, at the end of every episode, I tend to say, if you didn't catch our guest contact info, don't worry, we'll have those in the show notes. Check them out. I worked so hard on them. You're welcome. Well, it's been brought to my attention that our show notes are not as easy to find as I thought, which is why, starting summer 2020, the Filipino American Women Project is proud to be partnering with Captivate, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host. Captivate is created for independent podcasters, designed from day one to help you to focus on audience growth and the expansion of your audio influence. One way that Captivate makes our lives easier as independent podcasters is by taking the guesswork out of making a website for your show. That's right, a website for your show. So listeners, starting summer 2020, finding our show notes will be so much easier, all thanks to Captivate. You're welcome, as always. If you're about to start podcasting or are getting burnt out from all the extra work of producing one, like building a website, consider a 7-day free trial, that's right, free, with Captivate by visiting thephilamwoman.com. That's the Philam, short for Filipino American woman.com. Or, check out our show notes in the meantime, which is in the details section of each episode. Once again, you can visit thephilamwoman.com or visit the details section of this episode.
It was more than just moving. I had left behind my own business that I had run for over 5 years. I had to say goodbye to my social life, my friends from college, my friends from church, friends from childhood, since I was 10 when I moved to San Diego. I left behind my sense of community. Not that I ever put a deadline on my success or anything, but you think that at 30, you would have some portion of your life figured out, but I essentially was starting from zero. I had to rediscover who I was professionally, personally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and socially. And that was really the first year of me being here on the East Coast. And a lot of times it was all put in the back burner because we needed to really take our business off the ground. My husband and I didn't move out here for personal reasons. We moved out here for professional reasons. So yeah, there was a big portion of this last year where I didn't know who I was, and I really had justified my lack of identity with the success of our business. We were working so hard in our business that 3 months into moving to the East Coast, we had to fly back to San Diego because the San Diego Business Journal and the Rosie Network awarded our company Startup of the Year. I actually think it's quite fitting how I'm doing this recording on June 22nd, 2019, because it was just about a year ago that my biggest fear of moving, which we did a couple of days later in June of last year, was that I was going to lose myself coming out here. Anyway, I will fast forward to the corny ending. Now, I know that I still have a long way to go, but compared to last year, I feel like I have learned so much more about myself and grown more into the woman I am meant to be than I ever had in any stage of my life. Earlier on this year, I knew deep down that it was time for me to feel more of myself again. Except at that point, I had become a different version of myself. And that's what made it difficult for me to consider starting up the Filipino American Women Project again, because I did not have the same energy or motivation or inspiration I had the first time around. I had to find a new type of motivation and inspiration to start this show again. The good news is that I was able to find a new source of energy and motivation and inspiration to start this podcast. And you'll get to learn more about that as these episodes start rolling out.
Until then, I want to go back to why I created this experimental episode to begin with. How does this story tie into the lesson I wanted to share today, which was to do it anyway, even if you don't have your ducks in a row? Well, the biggest thing I learned in just this last year of moving is that I used to think I did have to have all my ducks in a row to do anything. But with how sporadic and, dare I say, chaotic these last 12 months have been, it has shown me how capable I am of just doing things on the fly and how to wing it, how to improvise, and how to be resourceful with what you have for the little time that you're given. One of the biggest things I had to learn was just being completely okay with not completing things. In the startup world, a lot of things go unfinished. a lot of our plans have to change, and we have to go to an event or a meeting or take a phone call or even travel at a moment's notice. But my desire to be one with myself again was so much greater than the need to complete things or get my ducks in a row. It was more important that I had set this spontaneous deadline to launch this podcast in summer. And even if I didn't have the right equipment to do a podcast show, I literally had no idea how I was going to do it. I didn't have a mic. I didn't have a desktop. My MacBook Air, unfortunately, had water damage last year, so I didn't have really solid technology to work with. But at that point in my life, and that was months, if not weeks ago, the how-tos didn't really matter to me because it was more of just the drive and the hope of striving for something, because I already knew what it was like to struggle with a lack of identity for some time. That setting a goal, even if I didn't know how I was going to get there, really created this sense of adventure and urgency in my life. And before you know it, here I am with a microphone and a desktop computer and really the right resources and the right time and the right mindset to be sharing this with all of you and to share this little epiphany and why the TFAW Project is coming back. So why do it anyway, even if you don't have all of your ducks in a row? Well, I say, why not? Why not put it out there in the universe that you want something and just let life unfold for you and show you how it could be done? And this was a life lesson with a short story told by your host, Jen Amos of the Filipino American Woman Project. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you at the next episode.